Welcome to Beans and Breakdowns, a podcast dedicated to bridging the gap between specialty coffee and the heavy music community. On this episode, I'm joined by Ollie Jones, guitarist of the band Lethal Minds and also a part of Blossom Coffee Roasters in the UK. So grab a fresh cup of coffee and wake the fuck up! Today, I'm joined by Ollie Jones, brother of some alumni of the podcast. You may know Elliot from Death Nap, but Ollie Jones from Lethal Minds and from Blossom Coffee Roasters. So
that's me.
We're getting a 1-2 punch here.
Yeah. Am I the first coffee and horrible person or horrible music person?
No, definitely not the first.
I want to be in that. I feel like that's we're niche within a niche.
Yes. That's what the whole aim of this is about. It's finding who is the most pigeonholed specific person to the podcast.
Yes, I'm here for that. Hopefully I'm going for the title, going for the crown.
I think you are a first-time barista championship competitor though. Rad.
Yeah, so I've been working in coffee for this year is my 10th year in coffee. So a lot of how I came up in coffee and what I was interested in when I was interested in coffee for 3 or 4 years before I started working in coffee. And those years were even I was doing band stuff before that. So I've been doing some form of band since I was about 13, 14. Mm-hmm. Apart from actually pre that playing Deftones covers with my brother in our house. But when I say Deftones covers, the first 2 minutes of Head Up, because it was an easy riff to play. And that was before we got told off. So yeah, I've been doing that side of things for quite a long time. I've done the UK Barista Championships a few times, coached a few people for BCs, and done a couple of events around getting other people to compete, which I guess sort of ties into that. Probably came from the community vibes of listening to this kind of music, having more people do the thing that you think is quite fun. It's fun.
It's just peer pressuring people to do positive things.
Kind of, yeah. I have very bad reasoning behind it all. I'm you've been a barista, you've made coffee. I'm you're making frothy coffee. You're putting milk in under a steam arm and making it kind of hot and standing on stage with a microphone on, which is kind of strange because they're all Britney Spears head mics,
Yeah.
And telling people that know, arguably in some cases more than you do about coffee, really, really good judges that know the difference between X and Y. And you're it's definitely Y. And they're that's not. Yeah, so encouraging people just to kind of do that and get out of their comfort zone. I've met so many, again, so similar to the music stuff. Loads of people that I just met through coffee competition I now genuinely class as really good friends. So, and then when you get past that first hurdle of just doing it, it isn't very fun. It's sort of fun, but sort of awful and takes up way too much of your time and money. But the argument at the moment, which makes me sound a little bit bitter, is unless you win, it's sort of, if you think of world records, you don't really talk about the person who has the second best time in a world record. You only really talk about the person who's the best. So as long as you can take something out of it, it's every time I've competed, I've tried to have, apart from the very first time, which was just thrown in, my employer was who's doing competition this year? And I was oh, okay, guess I'm doing competition. The sort of second and third time I competed, I tried to take something to the competition stage I'd never either hadn't been done before or that I didn't know that much about prior to doing the thing. So second time I competed, I did a whole thing about frozen coffee. I don't know if you've played around much with freezing coffee. So again,
like whole bean or
yeah,
brewed?
yeah.
Okay.
So again, standing on shoulders of people way smarter than me, there is a couple of, I don't want to like misname anybody, but maybe I can send them to you afterwards so we can get all the papers. There's a place called Sub-Zero Coffee in Australia that are doing really cool stuff. You know, if you went to like an old school like ice cream place, and they'd have like the chest freezer that you could kind of see into, glass top. They were doing events with these glass top things with archived coffees. So this goes back to George Howell from Boston. I think he's like, again, probably seen as a bit more old school now, but like they were freezing green coffee way before anyone else was doing it. They have climate controlled green storage, and they were kind of, in my eyes, I might be wrong, were the pioneers around creating vintages. So 2017, 2018, 2019 Kenyans out at the same time, which is just rad. Like if you're kind of getting to this point in coffee. So people kind of took that and then said, well, what happens when we grind coffee from frozen versus, and then different temperatures. Very condensed takeaway for anyone who's really into trying this, or if you want to try this, stick your coffee in the freezer, airtight, can't let it oxidize. Grind just the portion that you need. This is for espresso, by the way. Weirdly, with filter, you're actually better warming the coffee up, which I've only heard about recently, which is really crazy.
That's going to be another thing. And I don't know if it's going to be on the podcast, but you're going to have to tell me what that means. But the warming it up. But
yeah, so
keep going with the frozen.
So all this boils down to, in a nutshell, is when you grind coffee, you want uniform pieces of coffee. Again, I'm going to use so many like analogies or phrases from other coffee people. That's all my brain is. I once heard someone say brewing coffee is like trying to fry 1,000 tiny pieces of steak to perfect medium rare. And so all the pieces have to be the same size. You have to apply the heat to them all evenly. Otherwise you kind of get that disruptive, not perfect brew. So by freezing the coffee, you create something more brittle. So when it breaks up, it shatters into more even pieces. So you can have a better chance at higher extraction and more consistent high extraction because the beans are more, I think the phrase is unimodal. So they're all the same sort of size. Again, simple takeaway. So I got to the finals the year I did that, and I dialed in the coffee for the semi-finals. Tasted great. Came in on finals day, didn't touch my grinder, brewed the first shot, ran at the exact same recipe, tasted the exact same. So like that's the really cool bit that you can lock in flavor. The really complicated part of it is you do need to make sure you're not like chucking something in the freezer, and if you don't have a frost-free freezer, which is a bit of a mouthful. So if you have like an icy freezer, then obviously you don't want your coffee to taste like fish fingers or peas or whatever you've got in your freezer. Right. So you need to kind of keep it totally sealed. So some people will vacuum seal them, and I'm not a huge fan of that because it's like loads of plastic and stuff. But super simply, if you have some coffee at home that you really, really like, chuck it, seal the valve. There's a valve on it. Close it down, chuck it in the freezer, and then brew a coffee the next day. And the extraction, I think, should be slightly higher. The warming up thing, I think, is to reduce the amount of really small bits so that you don't get too many fines, which can clog your filter paper. That's really nerdy.
So warming it up, like,
I think you're bringing it slightly from that super, super cold thing. The guys at ONA Coffee in Australia, have done quite a lot of content around this because they run like frozen bar. So you can, all the coffees they release some super expensive stuff, and then archive them, freeze them. So for anyone who is, if you look at it both sides of the industry, if you're a barista or cafe owner, you can buy super, super expensive coffee with zero waste because you can go, let's buy this coffee. We're going to charge, what's an expensive pour over in Montreal? Like $10?
If you can even find it. Yeah.
Okay. So my knowledge of, my brother took me to Dispatch. They were like two 2 days from, I think they'd started roasting that weekend. That's how long ago it was.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, I went for his wedding. I haven't been back. Sorry, it's too cold and expensive. But yeah, we literally just got there, and I think, from my memory, it was like $3 to $4 for drinking coffee in most places, and then $6+ if it was something fun. Yeah. Over here, if you're drinking maybe £4.50, £5 for like a good coffee, and then if someone's really dialed into buying the super spenny stuff, maybe you're spending £6, £7, £8. Unless you're really in this person is only doing crazy pop-up stuff and is £10 plus. The argument from being in this side of it, in the kind of the roastery side of it, is you could charge more and create quite a cool, I've only got 20 of these available. Whether they all go on day one or go in 3 weeks is kind of cool, because you're going to get this experience no matter what time you come. So right. I'm a big fan of the frozen coffee stuff. And I think it kind of had this big explosion of popularity and then sort of died off a little bit. Maybe it's become too normalized in those places. It's not exciting enough to talk about, and then the last time I competed, which was last year, it sounds like maybe a little bit hippie-ish, but talking about just being a bit more present, and like, if you actually pay attention to what's going on, you can kind of connect with the coffee a bit more. You can connect with the people you're sat with, like being a bit more present in life, I feel it's just important. I listened to a podcast a couple of years ago by he's a psychologist, but he like works with, I forget his name, he's got this delicious Scottish accent. He could read the diary to you. You could read the dictionary to you, and it would be like, I now know more about this. And he does this whole section. So he speaks to like high performing athletes and actors and stuff. And he basically just talks about being grateful. And it was like one of the most eye opening moments of like my adult life. And just like, you just be grateful for stuff. You can kind of dial down all the stress that's going on. So yeah, it was sort of birthed off the excitement of that. I brewed it's actually the coffee I was drinking this morning. So we've got fresh crop of that coffee now. But I brewed we did like heats and then semi-finals and finals. But I used a really humble varietal. So when you get to competition, you tend to see lots of Geschers and Cidras and very, very expensive, low volume producing coffees, but super expensive, really exciting cut profiles, but very price prohibitive. That's kind of why those coffees tend to do well, because they're super exceptional. But I used a Catawai, which is a pretty easygoing coffee. Yeah. But it's produced by Mauricio Jimenez. He's got a farm in Tarazu in Costa Rica, and it's an anaerobic honey. So it's not. I was literally listening to your podcast with Blair from Dark Arts before, and he was going on about how wild anaerobics can be and stuff. I have a real simple theory of anaerobics. If you look into how anaerobics are done in a very simple, not too complicated, not talking about the science of it, they're sealed in something to create an anaerobic environment. If I can taste what it's been put in, that coffee has not been processed very well. So if you taste the coffee and you're like, this tastes like plastic, or it tastes like old boots, or it tastes like farmyardy, something's kind of gone on where process has overtaken everything else. To look back to when anaerobic and carbonic maceration became a thing, 2014, 2015, it was meant to highlight humble varietals and help producers receive a better price for coffees that perhaps they could cultivate more of. And so I feel like we've got lost a little bit in making the best unbelievably good, which as a coffee drinker is very exciting to me. Right. But what we should, if you like fun processed coffees, maybe also drink coffees from drink an anaerobic from Brazil, because we're taking coffee that they have fantastic infrastructure to produce, and probably making something that might have been in the chocolate territory be super jammy or super fruity.
Yep.
So yeah, like I don't buy into the sort of getting hung up on. I like processy coffee. I don't like processy coffees. I'm like, is the coffee good? Doesn't really matter how it's been handled. Is it good?
And I feel like in the 2 years plus I've been doing this podcast, I've definitely come to almost a full circle where when I was getting back into coffee during the pandemic, found the Hoff, went down the rabbit hole.
Do you know the Hoff?
Yes, the Hoff.
One of the first cafe I ever worked for that was a specialty coffee shop that dealt with specialty coffee was buying Square Mile. Mm-hmm. And so like,
it wasn't I remember,
stock, was it? No, this cafe doesn't exist anymore. The building got knocked down. So again, that's going like 9+ years ago when I was doing that. It's a place called Caffeine and Co, which has changed a few names since and still sort of exists, but not where it was. And, like I didn't sort of see the gravitas of it at that. This is like pre-Hoffman on YouTube.
Yeah.
He was just like this guy, as Blair mentioned, this very tall dude that would kind of float around at coffee shows and you're like, it's the guy who owns Square Mile. And now it's so strange that the vast majority of people I meet in coffee know him as a YouTuber. Mm-hmm. Where I'm like, I remember just thinking like him as one of the OG cool coffee roaster people or founders of cool coffee roasteries that were sort of doing things ahead of the curve, really. Mm-hmm. And shout out to Red Brick, which is Square Mile's house espresso. Obviously, the company I work for do a great house espresso. But I don't know if there's many roasteries in the UK or outside of the UK that have consistently done a ripping house espresso blend. So shout out to Square Mile. Maybe the Hoff just does some dust on it. Some YouTube powder.
Over each batch, he's just like doing this or like his dandruff or something. That's what the...
Oh my God. Yeah,
just rubbing his hair.
Patreon juice. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, like you're saying about, is the coffee good? I feel like when you're getting into coffee, because I worked as a barista years ago and everything for a counterculture shop, which is similar to the Square Mile, but for the US, where, you had your West Coast roasters like Blue Bottle and things like that were doing great third wave style coffee. On the East Coast, we had things like Counterculture, Intelligentsia, and I believe Stumptown was doing things too. But
yeah, Stumptown was Portland, right? I think.
I thought Stumptown was New York. Maybe I'm wrong.
I feel like they came. I'm going to get fact checked here, but I'm pretty sure the OG Stumptown is in Portland because it's like on my bucket list of I want to go to that shop.
Okay.
Even though they're owned by Pete's now, so slightly different game. But I think most of US coffee is owned by Pete's or someone else.
If they're owned by Pete's, then they're definitely West Coast. But the first one I went to was in New York, so that's why.
Did you go to West Village?
Yes.
Yeah. So I went to that when I first went to New York. I was like, I have to go to there. Like, went to Intelligentsia, the High Line, went to Stumptown, and yeah, like that is. I'm kind of really like that era of coffee.
It was very exciting.
Yeah, like coffee was it was cool, but it wasn't obnoxious. Like everyone who liked coffee was just like liked good coffee. Mm-hmm. But we hadn't really, I don't think that, I mean, it probably did exist, but the subculture of being in a cafe and someone using a WDT tool and kind of distributing espresso or talking to you and having 6 coffees on the menu just wasn't really a thing. One of my absolute favorite coffee memories of all time was being in the queue in New York in a really, I can't tell you the name of the cafe, can't remember, and maybe 6-7 people in front of me, and almost everyone was like, can I get coffee? And they were ordering like drip, batch, whatever. And you can't do that in the UK. If you go to the counter and say, can I have coffee? People will be an asshole to you and be like, what coffee do you want? We do all these different coffees. I'm like, no, this is the dream scenario. Yes, you want coffee? Cool. I will give you this cup of black coffee, put milk, sugar and cream in, whatever you want to do. That would be one of my absolute favorite things to happen in the coffee industry. If it ever happened, we just normalize people asking for coffee. And but those people, the caveat to that in the UK, if someone said, can I have coffee? They probably want a cappuccino. And that would be very frustrating if you give them back and be like, this is not what I want.
That's so Eurocore.
Yeah, we're a country of frothy milk and or oat milk and or 19 different sizes for stuff.
I love your bowel disrupting milk drinks.
Yeah. I mean, when, I've been in this sort of wholesale and sales side of it for a super long time now, like 8 years, I think. I've been off the bar longer, I've been on the bar now, which is quite sad. But when you're talking to people who are like just about to open, they're like, what cup should I get? And I'm like, well, obviously it's on you, color. I get really nerdy. I'll be like, the color will influence your coffee. And they're like, what do you mean? Like if you drink out of a black cup versus a pink cup versus a white cup, all of these things infer different things. FYI, drink out of pink cups, everyone. Like your coffee will taste sweeter out of a pink cup than any other cup. And we shouldn't technically drink coffee out of a black cup because you'll perceive more bitterness in a black cup than in a white cup.
It went from like nerd level here to like just
stupid, right?
Roof just now.
Oh, I will one up you with that then. Next time you get your coffee, I'll try and explain this because this is a visual thing. Latte art facing you normally, like whatever pattern it is, if it's like that. If you sip it from the front and then you spin the cup around, you sip it from the back, it tastes different. That's a real thing.
Oh god!
You will think I'm an absolute lunatic for saying it. Someone's told that to me, and I was like, "Yeah, this feels like you're laughing at me, and like this isn't a real thing." But because when someone's pouring latte art, they're essentially pushing the espresso, like the crema on the espresso, to the back of the cup. There is a slight perception of higher bitterness towards the back of the cup, which is why at barista competitions, everyone asks judges to stir their drinks so that there is like a homogeneous flavor experience. So yeah, if you're left-handed, if you want to add to your, I have a 7-shot oat latte with, stand on one leg while you make it for me. If anyone's left-handed, you could be like, please, can you pour it so I can drink it left-handed? I had a regular who was left-handed and I realized this and made her drinks left-handed. She did not appreciate it. She just thought I was a lunatic. So poured it so that if she drank it, it would be right. So yeah, we go down there. We go down. I'm not that guy anymore. Okay. Now I'm just like, what do you want? What's going to make you happy? Like, is this what you want? Is this what your guests want? Does this financially make sense for your cafe? Cool. Let's do that. Please don't be mad if it's not what you want, because we feel like we've covered all bases.
I feel like this is a good point to talk about. I know that you're not drinking anything because it's 5:30 in the afternoon. So
it is. Yeah. So I don't drink. We were talking briefly just before we sort of jumped on this that like everyone assumes you work in coffee, you drink like 20 cups of coffee a day. Like I would die like anybody else. So like I'll have a pour over every morning, make I have a V60 02, so the bigger V60, and I'll make a two cup thing. So I think I used to have the decanter, which I feel like you described, you might have the decanter, and I broke it, which I was really sad about. But yeah, 2 cups. My wife usually kind of waits. She can tell when the coffee's been made, and then she'll sort of have breakfast with me, and we'll have coffee in the morning. It's kind of the only time that I can tell if I'm sick or hungover or something is if I can't have coffee first thing. But like the only day I'll have a lot of coffee is on a Monday, because we do quality control every Monday. So we will taste a sample of every roast from the last week. So like last Monday, I think we had like 30 bowls to taste. So you'll go and I will have had my coffee but you're kind of tasting and spitting out. So yeah, I'll have 30 or so coffees, and then I'll probably drink something else that day, and that'll be it. So I actually tend to drink more coffees if I'm like going on a city visit where I'm going to see 2 or 3 of our wholesale partners or like potential partners we want to work with. And you're like coffee in the morning, 3 or 4 coffees when you're out.
What is that drink when you walk in to judge your wholesale partners? What are you walking in and ordering?
Honestly, it depends on, and then this is not meant in a shade way. I would gauge who's there, who's working. Like if I go in somewhere, I know you were talking about Shop before. If I go in there, I can order anything because they dial their coffees in super well. They tend to have weird coffees on, which is kind of fun. I went to a cafe today. Shout out to the guys Upside Down, which is definitely a Stranger Things reference. In Blackpool, which is
Nice.
like not a super so I live in Preston, which is sort of in the center of the UK, about an hour from Manchester. Like we're basically like an hour to 2 hours from most places. We can be in like the really pretty parts of the country, like in the Lake District, which is gorgeous, or 2 hours to London, 2 hours to Scotland. So it's like right bang in the middle. But like those guys had coffees in from Tim Wendelboe and can't think who else. Curve Roasters. It's like really good roasters. And I'll be like, we're good friends with those guys there. And I'll be like, he was like, what do you want? I'm like, what should I have? So generally with people like that, they'll have a coffee that they probably want me to drink.
Yeah.
If I know them well enough. Generally, I guess I'd probably have more milk drinks or batch. So I'd have like a flat white or something like that, because a coffee can be like an 8 out of 10 flat white and be still great.
Yep.
If you order an espresso and it's anything less than 10 out of 10, I think it's just not really a fun drinking experience.
It sucks.
And like I've spent hours, literally hours training for barista competitions. And I know you can do everything right and still make an espresso taste really bad. You know, you could be using the best coffee, amazing prep and all that. And like you just fall into the espresso machine slightly and manage to smash your portafilter in and create the world's worst channel. And sometimes the coffee just doesn't behave, or you do everything right, you brew it right, and it still doesn't taste like you want it to. So generally, if someone's got a good batch brew program, like they have a good brewer, and I know that it's not, we put a batch on in the morning and that's it. Like someone who, I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, we put a batch on and we might put another one at 2:00 if anyone orders it. I'm like, what time do you open? Like 8 a.m. Like you put in a batch on and it's like set for like 6 hours. And then they were surprised they weren't selling a lot of coffee.
You're supposed to change your batch like max hour and a half, but usually about an hour is you should change it.
I think for like a really high quality place, like hour of 90 minutes. I think in the UK, probably two hours is probably
just do
relatively
half
normal. Yeah, like I'll still go in places that brew like a 5-liter batch in the like 1 in the afternoon, and you're like, you might sell like 3 cups out of that, and then your baristas are all going to just get wasted drinking it. But so yeah, generally it just depends on where you go. I don't order hand brew in cafes, generally speaking, unless I know they're set up to make it well, because I feel like I'm taking up too much time for somebody.
Right.
And how do I word this without sounding bad? I would rather buy the coffee and drink lots of it at home than pay £8 for a hand brew. Like
I understand that.
Unless it's a coffee that I'm only going to drink it there and that's it, game over. I don't want to own the coffee, but I would just like 1 cup of it.
Yep.
It's so much easier for me to, and I think most people should drink. That's why if batch was in every cafe, in a society, we would drink more black coffee, because I think hand brew in the UK is starting to become only expensive, only rare, which is kind of where it started. And then we kind of went through this weird phase that all coffee should be hand brew. And like, there are certain coffees that, in my opinion, shouldn't be £4 a cup because they're good, but the bag of coffee is £8.
Yep.
And like, we should be working towards that coffee being £2, £2.50 and brewed really well, because you also have the margin to make that coffee and make it not good a few times on your batch brewer.
Right.
But the day that everyone starts just drinking, it's like if you want to drink less milk in your diet, and people are like, oh, what should I get? Oat milk? Should I get almond milk? Should I get soya milk? Should I get coconut milk? Like, brew your black coffee really well, and your vegan or non-dairy audience will gravitate to that if you can crush it.
Just make a good batch brew and make it £2.50 a cup.
Yeah, that's and the best places that are in the UK right now, I think, without even, you might have espresso, you might have hand brew while you're there, but their batch is probably like 5 times better than the next batch on the way.
I've I don't know if I've ever come across a Fetco batch brew that is undrinkable.
Yeah, and Fetco. It's interesting you should say Fetco as well because Fetco in the UK is more synonymous with people that really want to brew good batch, whereas there's like one or two other manufacturers that are good, but they're not so good places as well. You don't tend to sort of associate. I guess it's similarly like with a Slayer espresso machine. Like you don't tend to see a Slayer in a bar or in a restaurant or cafe in the UK that's brewing bad coffee. It's not that common. They kind of, if you've spent the money and got the infrastructure to do that, you probably care. I mean, it's maybe because they're a bit more few and far between in the UK than they might be in the US or in Canada.
In the US, Fetco has like dominated since the beginning. I feel like batch brew on a Fetco has been the standard.
So over here, it was kind of done for quite a long time, but like,
wow.
I know, yeah, they kind of have a weird position in the market where it was those guys. And then to be fair, like that's sort of it for the bigger batch brewers. So now you've sort of seen this resurgence of smaller or like really cool single cup, but then can scale up. There's a brewer called the Hipster Brewer.
Okay.
Can't get my head around the name. Considering it's like £6,000.
What the fuck?
But it does crazy brews right down to my favorite name brewer of all time. Do you know the brand Melita?
Yep.
Like they're like commercial, probably see it in the supermarket. They have a brewer called the Aroma Boy.
Oh yes.
It's like £35, single cup. People like take the plastic brewer out and put a small Kalita. And it fits perfectly. Or one of the Araya brewers. You can pop one of those in there and it's basically an automatic 1 cup brewer for, I mean, if you put the Kalita in there, like £50-60.
Yeah.
And
that's beautiful.
Like I bought one, I bought a black one because I don't think the cream one kind of goes with my aesthetic. And I tried it. I sold it to a friend because I was like, I bought this just to see if it's good. It's only good in a 1 cup household because it's 300 ml, I think is the biggest thing. And it is tiny. It is like an iPhone and a bit. Like it is small. You should have a look there. I don't know if you use the word kitsch much in Canada, but like it's kitsch.
Yes.
The cream one is like, I mean, like I would 100, if I did like a Christmas buying thing, I would 100% have that as like the top one for any coffee person that you know. I don't know if you can get it over there. Can you?
How much is it in the UK?
Like £35, I think.
It's 118 Canadian dollars.
How is that possible? Maybe we should set up a thing. I'm going to start shipping them out there.
You should do a store.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that'd be Amazon. What, like 60-70 pounds? Like, because it's about half, right?
It's about half. So it's fucked up because even I can see on UK stores, it's literally like 30 pounds.
You could probably import that.
20 you could probably pounds 90.
That's crazy. I mean, yeah. So maybe this isn't outside of Canada only.
Damn. It's different. It's almost like the Wilfa when I see like Wilfa grinders and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to try one. And I think I've seen one in my entire life in Canada.
Yeah, so they're made in, well, at least they're Norwegian, Swedish.
I think they're Swedish.
Yeah, they're fine. They're like, we sell Mocha Masters. Like that's like if you want to buy 1 liter to, it's like 1.2 to 2. They do a commercial one, which is 2 liters, which is really, really good. And their commercial one's like £300. Like it's fine. I heard you mention on another podcast, the ratio brewers, which are like 500-600. For me, the technical ones knock them out of the park though. Like the ratios look outrageous, but like if I had a really dreamy kitchen, ratio all day. But we had one for a while. I didn't love it. Maybe I was just bad at using it, being bad barista. But I think sometimes you get like you said, you buy a V60 for like £10. You can literally buy the plastic ones for about £5. Some paper filters, And yeah, you could spend all the money you want on scales and pouring kettles and stuff. But really, if you've got a brewer, I mean, you could probably make a really good cafetiere French press if you buy good coffee and you have a basic understanding of recipe, like literally basic. So yeah, I think people do get tied up too much in kit.
Yeah.
But I think because it becomes a hobby, like if you're into motorbikes or you're into guitars, like I don't need 3 guitars. I don't need that, but I still want more. But yeah, the band stuff's more about, we're at a point now with like playing shows being a bit older that we don't, it felt like every show you played when I was like, I don't know, 16 to early 20s, you have to take every bit, like you were first on and you were providing backline for the whole night. It just made no sense. And like we owned a van. I remember I took a loan out to buy a van for the band. Didn't drive. Like, so I was paying and like the band were paying me. It was so weird. And the van broke down and we loaned it to someone and then they broke it. It was so stressful. Being a bit older and doing band stuff feels so much less stressful. And there's only one way I can word it is I don't really care as much. Like I care a lot about the band being good, but I don't really care about like being cool, which I think when you're like 16, 17, 18, sort of part of being in a band is trying to be cool, I suppose. Right. I wasn't really like the cool kid in school, but like playing in a band that was like playing shows with big bands at that point. Like looking back on some of the shows we played, and I don't know if like how much Elliot touched on some of those early shows that we were doing. Cause like we were in a band together. Well, we were in bands, 2 or 3 bands together. But looking back on some of the shows that we did, at the time it was like, oh, it's cool. Opening for A Day to Remember, opening for Bleeding Through, opening for Parkway Drive, who are now all these like insanely big bands. It was just a cool thing to do. Like we were still a little bit like, hey, that's Misery Signals over there. Like that's ridiculous. But yeah, like playing with some of those bands, it felt sort of normal, but also now it's like I want to play like the good shows. It's not like the be all and end all. We played a show not so long ago and we were on like second and it was a really late show and I had a ridiculous workload that week. And I was like, guys, I'm going after we've played this show. I'm going to put my gear in the car. If we've sold some merch and stuff, cool. I'll high five whatever bands are around. But I think it felt like the most punk thing to do. It's like, you don't have to stay around and watch all the bands because if you actually don't want to, you can just go. It's fine. Like it's not. I feel like some people will listen to that and think that's an asshole thing to do. Right? I don't. Some of the shows I don't want to say we're a crossover band. Like we're a heavy band, but we get put on loads of hardcore shows. I love listening to hardcore. We get put on like deathcore shows.
I can see that.
Don't really listen to that kind of stuff that much. No. And then also, if you've got a 3-hour drive after a show and you've got to go into a meeting with like a Michelin star restaurant in the morning, which legitimately happened to me a couple of weeks ago. It was like, I need to go. I want to go and lie down.
The promoter's like sweating you. Like they're sweating you about having to leave. And you're like, I have to meet with a Michelin star chef. What are you doing tomorrow? I'm going home.
Yeah, the dude's there in like sweatpants and like just looking like there is not anything on his radar for the next 2 weeks. Yeah. But also like, again, because like within the band, our vocalist is a lot younger than the rest of the band. He loves it. He'll hang out and like, he seems to know everyone because he hangs out. And I'm like, dude, we're not like, if I have to bounce and you want to hang out, that's cool. And like we've got a run of shows in a week and we will probably all hang out at those because we've booked the time off work and it's gonna be fun. But I'm totally okay with being like, hey, this isn't the right time to do that. Saying I don't care sounds bad. It's just being more comfortable with like, I know I'm not doing this from a bad place.
Right. You don't have to please everybody at the show. Like, or not even that, but it's basically like I feel like when we're younger and we like have something to prove, I put that in quotes because there is a thing such as paying your dues, but then there is a such thing as like just getting older and knowing how the world works. So like even just knowing like mentally, I don't have the capacity because of all the outside stress I'm dealing with to enjoy the rest of this show.
Yeah, I'm not going to be a good person while I'm here. Like I'm literally going to be so like thinking about not being here that actually like, being here is probably bad vibes.
Like I need to leave, but you guys can do whatever you want and that's fine. Like just don't hold me in a bad place because mentally like I'm a little off. Absolutely.
And like, again, to my knowledge, we're not like being seen as the band that play a show and then leave. And also for full expression, we don't just literally leave after every show, but like, I do remember playing a show in the band I was in with my brother. God, this will be 15 years ago or something like that. And we were mid-set, finished a song, and two members of one of the other bands walked across the stage and started loading out across the stage. They were literally picking up guitar cases and started leaving. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen because we were all like, are these guys just like literally like if you're going to do that, like finish your set and throw your stuff off stage and kind of either leave and go or do it between bands. They were like, nah, we're literally going to, we're out. Your band is so bad that we're out. Maybe we were bad. I don't know. But God, that was so funny. But yeah, that's going back. It feels like a very different time when we were doing that. Like I said, in the whole, what I've kind of loved now is that we're playing shows and such a mixed variety of people playing shows. You can sort of tell some of the people who have been doing it for a bit longer, or maybe this is their fourth or fifth band. And then we're like playing shows. What's starting to happen, and a friend of mine pointed this out, post-COVID, there's a lot of people who are getting into stuff because like they really want to do it because they couldn't do it for a while. And they were like, oh, I actually really want to do that. So I'm going to actually do it now. Maybe there's a degree of us like pushing a little bit harder now with the band because we all are in a position to do it and we do want to do it. But for the first time in 6-7 years, I'm starting to see more younger bands coming out, which is really cool. Who are also like very good, very quickly, or like get followings really quickly. We, not the last band I was in, the band before. We were going for like 7 or 8 years, and we got to a point where things were sort of good, where we could play a show and people would come to see us. And we were playing hometown. There was an era of that band where we would book a hometown show and like 200 kids would come, and it was sick. We would be able to book really good bands. And then, towards the end of the last band I was in, you'd struggle to get 20 people to come to a show because it's sort of, people had got a bit older, people had started having kids, or just being in a position in life where going out to gigs wasn't that exciting. But post-COVID, I definitely feel like you see tours now and people are just going crazy.
Yep.
Like even the small shows, like the sideline shows to the bigger tour packages are smashed out. And we played London a couple of weeks ago for the first time, and it was literally insane. Both the shows were better than shows we've played half an hour away from us. So there's definitely like an appetite for shows now, I think.
I watched some of the cams from I think you guys posted a video on YouTube, and it was like
we played
the intro.
Yeah, dude, that was New Cross in London, which is like an iconic venue that we were all like so stoked. Even being at this point in your life or your music career, there are certain venues you're like, I would love to play that venue.
Is the sound as good as everybody says it is?
Oh God, yeah, it's insane. Yeah, and like it didn't feel like it was going to be really, really good. Like because when you go in, it doesn't look like you're going to play like an academy venue or where that there's going to be ridiculous sound engineering. Have you ever been to the Star and Garter in Manchester?
Not for a show, but I went during Outbreak. They had like a podcast.
Oh yeah, they had the podcast thing. Yeah. So like that room upstairs, like I've played that room a few times. I went to one of the roughest shows I've ever been to in there. I was talking about that earlier on today. It's messed up. It was like Knuckle Dust, Death Before Dishonor, and like another band. Man, our bassist will know exactly what day this was on. He's like an encyclopedia, and it was like Hockey Mask Rough. I was like, I was like 17 or something like that. I was like, I am out. Like this is too rough for me. But that was, so we played Star and Garter. Fun fact, I went to see This Is Hell in that venue, and I had to leave before they started because I was getting the train home. And if you can picture that venue, the train station is literally across the road.
Right.
I heard them starting to play from the platform, and I was like, absolutely devastated.
No.
And if you dig through my social media, there is a video of Knock Loose playing in that venue, like pre Knock Loose, absolutely, pre Coachella and all the crazy stuff. But yeah, I think that show was sold out. But those venues don't look like they're going to have insane sound, and there's just some magic in the walls where every band you see in there just sounds insane.
It's got to be like the lack of like insulation, or the fact that it was built 200 years ago or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Like to think maybe 6 weeks before we played New Cross, there's like footage of Speed headlining in there. And our bassist and drummer went to that, and they were like, it was just crazy. So yeah, New Cross, shout out to New Cross, like possibly the coolest venue in the UK. Shout out to Star and Garter for being the best venue in the Northwest. And like we're starting to see really cool is the wrong word. Like Madball are playing there in a couple of weeks. And like
that's going to be a great fucking show.
Perfect venue for the perfect band. And yeah, like knowing that some of those bands are picking those venues that are like the iconic venues, rather than they could absolutely move up to a bigger venue and probably would be like mid-sold, but that show at Star Router, I mean, if it doesn't sell out, that's absolutely travesty. Yeah. Like it's a sweaty wall venue. That's the only downside. Like if you touch the walls, you get a bit greasy.
Yep.
But yeah, God, yeah, those were good. But like we've got some shows next week where we've got a show in Luton, which will be my first trip to Luton, sort of near London. And the venue's been changed to an actual venue because the first venue we were booked in was a vegetarian restaurant.
Sick.
I was like a little bit disappointed we're not playing in the restaurant. I've done some stuff in my life, but playing a gig in a restaurant would have been a new one.
Iconic, right?
Yeah. Not quite Denny's, but we'd be going towards Denny's.
What the fuck is up, vegans?
I would have said it. I've said some terrible things. So when I was like getting into like heavy music, you know, it's like bands like Pantera, and I kind of weirdly like jumped from like Green Day to Pantera like very quickly. And then it was bands like early Chimera, Shadows Fall, like super metallic stuff. But like I still think to this day, Mic Drop, the best metal album of all time is the First Kill Switch Engage album. It's a faultless album. Like you can put that album on from start to finish and there's not a bad song on it. And there are so many hard riffs on there, like listening to it now, where like, I don't know if you saw the footage of them playing New England Metal Fest a couple of years ago, and No Barrier. And people are just getting murdered. Like it's not a metal show that, like, I'll send it to you after this. I'll find it and send you the link. Like I would have put somebody in, as my brother would say, I would have put someone in the bin. Like someone would have been absolutely sat down. But like, you listen to those albums and they're just ripping metallic riffs. There's loads of like tinges of hardcore on them.
Yeah.
But Adam D just used to say terrible things, like stupid stuff. And I just thought, hey, I could be that guy. I could say fucking stupid stuff while I'm on stage. So I've got a microphone. And I always regret having it on. Yeah. Like our drummers always like say, you know, you can get people going, get them excited. And I'll just say something dumb. So I generally try not to say anything. Like I complained when we played in London, we played a venue and the toilets were the worst toilets I've ever seen at any venue. And at one point there was 4 ladies in the toilet in this, like a cubicle, but how to describe it? Like a festival toilet.
Like a stall.
Yeah. but like there was just 2 of them at the front of the venue, and 4 people managed to get into this one. And I really needed to not go for a wee, let's put it that way. And then the thought of having to go into this chamber of awfulness, and then the fact that there was 4 people and you could see the door move, it was so stressful. And I just decided to start talking about that while we were on stage. And then, as soon as the words start coming out your mouth, you're like, why am I talking about this? This is not a moment I want to relive. And now I've said it to you, now it could be relived forever. And shout out to the toilet.
I can't stop talking about it. Like, it's just still coming out, the words.
Yeah. And that's I think what's happening in the toilet. It was just out. It was out there. There was puddle. It was like foggy when I went into the thing. It was dank. Yeah. It was I don't know which of the 4 was responsible, but I felt like I needed to brush my teeth afterwards.
Iconic London toilets.
Yeah, like I ended up going to the venue next door. I was like, just went in and spoke to the bar guy and was like, you've probably heard this before, but the toilets next door are one of the worst things I've ever seen. Please, can I use your toilets? But bog chat, top tier chat. Come to the podcast about. I mean, to be fair, if you drink a lot of coffee, you're probably very familiar with the bowl
movements. Yeah.
That sounds like a Midwest emo band.
It does. Familiar with
what's up with bowel movements?
Bowel movements. There's already a band called Movements. Let's just add bowel.
I think, because I know that, like, I know of that band, and I'm literally thinking of how their songs would sound like about someone singing about like the last toilet roll. It would fit.
Yeah. Abandoned in the stall with 3 sheets.
3 sheets is the name of the album.
3 sheets left.
Broken door, or broken, like the door starts like coming open, or the motion sensor light has come off, and you have to like flail your arms.
Yeah, waving it around, throwing things.
Yeah, and then
over the
someone
door.
can just see the shadow of you just going wild in the store. Like, what is happening in there whilst doing Midwest emo? You could record the album in the acoustics of the. Again, I should.
This is when we need to draw the line. Where's the line?
Yeah, that's it. It's done. It's done.
Lethal Minds are releasing a song tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah, so 3rd of November. That is the right month. So we've been sat on this song. We re-recorded it to exist as part of some new material, but we actually recorded this in the last session of our recording. So we put a release out like tail end of last year, and we kind of finished this song and one other song at the same sort of time. We're like, this is really good, but let's kind of record it and keep it for something. Mm-hmm. And our singer Ollie is super good friends with Jake Huxley, who is in a band called Going Off, who are absolutely just going wild at the moment. Shout out Going Off. And he was like, I'll see if Jake wants to do something on the track. And like, I'd met Jake very briefly, but I didn't really know him well when he came and did his first take. And his vocals are crazy. Like, he's got one of the most, there's not many vocalists where you know who the singer is. Like, who was it? There was a band someone was talking about recently, and it's like, it's unmistakably, you might not love their style of vocals, but they don't sound like anybody else. They sound like that band, which I like bands like that.
Like Not Loose.
Yeah, I think it actually genuinely might have been talking about Not Loose, and how his, like, the guitar player could do all of their vocals, and that would be a very different band. Mm-hmm. I would listen to that band, but
Dying Fetus meets Kill Switch Engage.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm here for that. Like, literally, I feel like that needs to happen. But that's what makes that band. That's what makes Not Loose rip, is that they have that like push and pull, like crazy bit, and Jake's vocals next to Ollie's vocal is just really fun to hear. So we had that track, sat on it for ages, and then we wanted to record some new material, which we've been working on for ages. So we pulled all that together about 2 months ago. Jake, I think, just topped up we wanted to kind of tweak his vocals slightly. So his the track called Born to Lose is out Friday, and then sneaky. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this stuff. I don't care. We're doing a split with a band called Hour of Reprisal, who are a sick UK band. Super political, super like, I don't know if many people do this these days. I used to do it all the time when I was young. Like I'd get like the lyric book when you bought a CD and like read the lyrics of something. Like ages me talking about going to buy a CD, for Christ's sake. But if they do a lyric video or just do lyric content of any of their songs, like their lyrics are insane. They're not afraid to talk about pretty intense stuff, and I think it's cool for a band to have a very good voice in kind of what's going on in the world, and like their songs mean something. So we've got kind of 2-track each split coming out, which is hopefully dropping in December. Like it's all done, so we just need it's basically, I don't think it is all done, but I think the plan is to sort of drop that, and then there's another single to release in the new year. So it'll be like there's sort of like 4 songs in the new Lethal Minds sort of stuff, and I think this stuff definitely feels more like there's a bit more identity to these tracks. Like when we wrote the last stuff, I think we were still working out what this band was going to be like. Our drummer, who originally sang in the band, so our drummer sang in the band for like the first year we did stuff, and our friend who was a sick drummer just couldn't. He wasn't really into this kind of. He's like loves like Animals as Leaders and crazy tech death metal
shit. Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, can you play this really slow Kublai Khan drum beat where there's just drums and bass? And he was like, I don't get it. So he like, as a human being, good fit as a drummer that understood that kind of music. It didn't really make sense. And our vocalist was like, well, I can do it if we can find a vocalist. And vocalists are like some of those vocalists and drummers, I think, are the hard people to find in a band. There's like 8,000 guitarists and bassists.
Yeah.
So the cafe I told you about in Blackpool, the guys at Upside Down, Jake who's in Going Off, used to chef for them. And so I was in there chatting about stuff, and he's like, oh, my buddy Ollie is like looking for a project if you're looking for a vocalist. And so we kind of connected. He came to band, this absolute lunatic. And I was like, oh my God, who is this guy? He's crazy. And he's just like the nicest dude. Like he's Taoist, sick Taoist, and like just really wanted to be in bands and do bands, and has been in and out of bands for years. And so when he joined the band, we then had a guy who loves really aggressive beatdowns and like kind of hardcore, I guess. Myself and Andy likes everything, from like hip hop to, like every kind of hardcore and like heavy music. And I basically wanted to be in a band like Kublai Khan, because I think they're the kings of groove, like when stuff's heavy as shit, but is also like fun to listen to. And our drummer, our singer, who then is our drummer, likes, when we first started talking, he was again super into death metal and super fast stuff and just liked aggressive music. Mm-hmm. So the EP that's on Spotify now, I think you can hear all of that. It's like there's a bit of everything, whereas the stuff now is like real focused on groove, real focused on like being able to kind of bop with a song. There's actually, the vocals are less aggressive on all of, even though Ollie's got a really like aggressive vocal. He's a very what's the word? His diction's really good. So I think you can hear what he's singing about. So like one of the new tracks is about basically how we're fucking up the planet, and us as a human race are going to get rid of every other species on the planet. Mm-hmm. And you can hear, like, he's like quite passionate vegan, but you can hear how much like he's spitting rage about how he feels about that, which is sick. And then we've got a really a very obviously anti-Tory government band,
nice.
Rich people basically making all the decisions for us. And it's like one of the lyrics on one of the new tracks is like, "We have no voice or choice," and like that's it's a very Northern UK thing as well. Like in the north of the country, like it is very political, and I think that shines through a little bit more in these new tracks. I mean, the song that's coming out tomorrow is called "Born to Lose." I mean, that kind of gives you a bit of indication that we all feel like we're put on this planet, but we haven't got really much choice to do well at things.
Yep.
Getting kind of stuck in the rat race, and but yeah, it's "Born to Lose" is like one of my favorite songs I've written in any kind of band that I've been in. And yeah, it's weird because we've been sat on this song for like a year. I'm like, oh yeah, like that song, but like so many people, we've been playing it for a year. As like, oh, this is the song, check this out, you haven't heard it. I'm like, we fucking heard it. We've been playing this song for like 18 months. So like having that out and then having the split out, it's going to be, yeah, it's super exciting. Super exciting.
I'm very excited. I know that people don't know this, but I have heard the song already because I have special privilege because it's my podcast.
Oh yeah.
And so it's sick. This episode will be out a week from today. So the song will be out. The song is out now. So go and listen to it. Lethal Minds on Spotify, Apple Music, everything.
Yeah, with all the usual places and merch and all the stupid stuff.
Are y'all shipping do y'all ship from the Big Cartel just in the UK?
So in the UK at the moment, we sent some stuff to Europe and it was super messy. Like we had some couriers losing things and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so we're open to, we've done some stuff to the US. I'm doing a care package for Canada actually next week. So
okay.
Maybe getting Elliot's here and we can sort something out. But yeah, we've got some like tapes and stuff as well that we've done with some old movie references, depending on how old you are. Starship Troopers fans, Falling Down fans. If you haven't watched Starship Troopers and you're listening to this, go and watch Starship Troopers. It's fucking sick.
There's like a whole community episode that's making fun of Starship Troopers.
I mean, it's a great, terrible film. As all of the good ones are. And I think Falling Down, have you seen Falling Down, Michael Douglas? No. You should watch that. You know, when you just like have a really angry day, and like you just really annoyed at stuff, you'll never have one as bad as him. It's just like the ultimate epitome of how all of us in this band kind of have had too many of those days.
Yeah.
Where you just get annoyed at everything, but you maybe don't just start like getting a shotgun out of the back of your car and shooting places up.
And that's why you have Lethal Minds now.
Yeah, that's maybe. Yeah, that's maybe the tie-in. But I mean, we've literally just talked about we've all got terrible sense of humor, so we're all just trying to like, what funny film riff can we do? And also, it probably ages us a little bit on how old we all are. And talking about films that came out, like our singer had never seen Starship Troopers, and I was like, if we're putting this tape out, you have to go home and watch this. And I'm like, 2 hours later, he puts into like our group chat. He's like, "What the fuck is this film? This is so weird. This is so weird. Why are they talking about aliens and doing like a conscription service?" There is on our first stuff. I don't even know if it's on the internet anymore. There was some Starship Troopers samples on there, just snuck in. We used to walk out to basically aliens being shot, and then it's like, I don't know if people understand that that's an alien. It just sounds like people screaming, which is probably not the energy we need. Yeah. No, it's not a good vibe.
Not in today's in this economy.
No, it's God. I mean, look, ironically, we're probably all very anti-war and anti-conflict, but yeah, I think it's probably the only conflict is if you tell me you're a Tory, I'll just think you're a piece of shit. That's out there now,
unfortunately. But
yeah,
I vibe. I didn't say what I was drinking like an hour ago, but before we wrap up, I just wanted to say I'm drinking the Mauricio Salaverria, which is from Fantôme,
nice.
Quebec City. This is a natural process from Finca Himalaya in El Salvador.
Nice.
And we're looking for lemonade, raspberry lemonade, peach, and dark chocolate. There was definitely a lot of peach and dark chocolate, a little bit of the raspberry, but I didn't get the lemony, like sour.
So my top tip for tasting, if you're tasting coffees, and one of like the bugbears I hear a lot in coffee for people who are new to coffee, I don't get the flavors on the bag. Like the roastery I work for now, we don't put flavors on bag. We give like a tactile description. So it'd be like juicy or sweet or something. If you're really struggling, think of a color that the coffee best represents to you. And then what things are that color? It kind of points you in a bit of a direction. So if you're tasting a bit of pink or a bit of purpley red, then you might be going towards, that can still be such a huge window. And the more obnoxious coffee person in me is like, you could be Parma Violet, you could be Rose, you could be this, or you could just be like, you could be, strawberry or candied strawberries or fresh strawberries or strawberry jam. It doesn't really matter. The first question is always, is it good? And if it's good, great. If you are struggling to pin down a color at a flavor, actually probably stop looking at the bags, because if the bags are telling you stuff and that's not informing your drinking experience in a positive way, then for me, the most important thing on a bag is where the coffee's come from, the name of the farm, the name of the producer, if it's on there, the name of the process, if it's on there.
Yep.
And the roast date could also actually influence if the coffee's like tasting good, if it's 100%. Super fresh or super old. But yeah, the thing that I would love, especially with like how good social media is now, we could release a coffee and tag the producer on Instagram, which, you can do that in wine. You do that. And like when I did the Barista Championships last year, Mauricio sent me a video message just saying how honored he was for me to be using his coffee and wishing me good luck and all that. And it was magic. And like his daughter messaged me saying like, thank you. His son messaged me. We had loads of like random follows from Costa Rica when we like published all that. That shit's magical. Like, you really do find your privilege in that moment where you like, someone on the other side of the planet is not in. And also I want to say, I don't like the, how do I say this? I saw a really interesting documentary talking about we shouldn't put coffee farmers in the light of poor coffee farmer, because that's not, they're a producer of amazing things,
right?
Amazing products. And they should be paid based on the quality of that product. And if we can pay someone a premium for that, incredible. But ultimately they're there to produce, they're producing something that they want to sell to a market to live as good a life as possible. Right. And that's all we want to do. But I think you have to understand and acknowledge where there is an unbelievable gap in socioeconomic funding, if that's even the right way of putting it, where someone in El Salvador might be being paid $1 a day to pick coffee cherry, which we're paying $6 a cup to drink. That's messed up. But what specialty coffee was all supposed to be about is the traceability of where the coffee comes from, and the funds and price paid for that coffee via an importer was the best it could possibly be.
Right.
And one of the most informative things I've watched on this, ironically, was someone who worked for Starbucks, who was displaced by genocide in Rwanda and found their way to the US, and talked about weeping about when they got their library card for the university that they were at, because it had their name on it and it was identification and something that they could be proud of. And their role within Starbucks, if I'm remembering this correctly, was talking about the traceability of the coffees they buy. And, I'm not saying that Starbucks has good traceability within their business, but they have the infrastructure and money to be able to do it probably better than anybody else could do, should they want to do. But they were talking about the importance of putting a producer's name on a bag or on a website. So where possible, if as you said, when you're looking at that coffee, this is where this coffee comes from. So if we can get past this coffee's from Colombia or this coffee's from Ethiopia and be say their name. There's a really cool roastery in the UK called Girls Who Grind, and they only buy from female producers, and primarily work with a lot of female cafe owners And they did this whole thing of say my name, and they had the producers themselves articulating their names so they could be pronounced correctly, because us white folk are bad at saying anything that isn't John.
Or David.
Yeah. And like I remember seeing that and just being like, this is sick. Like this is the stuff that is important. Like if you're going to reference someone, like do it correctly. So yeah, like the thing that I would love to see more is we can champion amazing the superstar sort of, how would you just say, celebrity coffee producers that are starting to become more prevalent, which is great. But like every person who touches the coffee, any person that you can say, like it's so much, like you're talking about gifting coffee to someone or gifting a coffee setup. Imagine like how much more powerful it is if you're like, oh, I got this coffee like from this country. The producer's name is this. And like that person goes, what do you mean producer's name? And you're like, well, if you look, like instead of the stuff you buy at the supermarket or whatever, you buy it from Jeff Bezos and on Amazon.
Your Death Wish coffee.
Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? Like, it's like Death Wish, not the label, isn't there? Like a strong coffee brand.
Before we go, let me know what your favorite city for beans and breakdowns is.
So in the UK, definitely Edinburgh is one of my favorite places to go. Really great coffee community, amazing food, and it's like a pretty city to visit. Shout out Beatnik Coffee, as I'm doing an event with those guys tomorrow, and it's the kind of place you can go in at like 8 a.m. and get coffee, but they'll be like blasting hip hop, which is just rad, and the bar design and everything in there is really cool. Shout out Lowdown Coffee, probably one of the best coffee shops and definitely one of the most progressive coffee shops in the country. Like house espresso, beyond what anyone should be brewing as a house espresso. And yeah, it's just a great city to eat and hang out. But I live very close to Manchester, is where I work, and Manchester's kind of got a good mix of. It's becoming. I don't like saying it's like London, because London's just too chaotic for a silly northern man like me. There's just too much happening. Whereas Manchester's now getting to a point where if you want like coffee and donuts, you can go do coffee and donuts. If you want to go do brunch, you can go do brunch. If you want to go eat the best pizza, if you want to go eat the best Thai food, you want to eat the best ramen. Like we're now getting to the point where the city's, I wouldn't say it's saturated. It's just got really good scenes in each of the kind of places, the different like kind of food environments that you want to do. So, and obviously for like playing shows and stuff, Manchester's always been like the one for. It's like 45 minutes for me to get to, and if I'm going to go see a show in the UK, it's most likely going to be in Manchester. If that answers that question. Well,
I like your answers. Mad love for the UK's coffee scene for sure. I have not really had a single bad coffee when I've been over there. Shout out TAC, SOP.
So I used to manage. We didn't touch on that. I used to manage TAC in my early barista days. So nice. Under its own old ownership, when I left, it sort of changed hands a few times and it's slightly different now. But yeah, shop. So shop, SIOP is Welsh for shop.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So shop is how it's known. Because I used to call it, I was like, it's SIOP. You sure?
It's just
shop.
Yeah.
So, those guys like consistent. Yeah. Idle Hands.
Fig and Sparrow.
Yeah. Super like central. So, and like we're now sort of seeing stuff outside the city. There's a place called Grapefruit Coffee, which is kind of towards, if Outbreak is, I don't know where it's going to be next year, but worth the trip if you're like a coffee head. Everyone who is a coffee person in Manchester would say Grapefruit's the best, because like I went there, when I said like I just asked what should I have. Perry, who owns Grapefruit, is an absolute animal for having something that you just don't expect him to have. So like last time I went, he was like, I've got the US Barista Champions coffee that he took to the Worlds, which was, he got a lot from a producer that we've worked with her brother, I think it is. And he sent a lot to Diego Bermudez, who's like a really famous producer, as much as like a processor. And he managed to buy, they did like a special set of the coffee as it is, and then Diego's processing of the coffee. So you got to taste not just a different process, but a different producer process. And phenomenal. And I'm like, dude, why are you sharing this with me? This must have, I think it was like 100 pounds or something like that for like 10 doses or something. And it's like, well, because you get what this is. Like, this is insane.
If anybody's going to try it.
Yeah, and like that was like his stash, not like the coffee shop stash. So yeah, grapefruit. New place called Oscillate opened like last year. Sick. Place called Corner Shop opened a couple of months ago outside the city. Like he's like super sustainable. His lamps are made out of old mushrooms. They've like the lamp shades have been grown by someone that he knows. He's an absolute maniac.
That's
like,
insane.
Just people doing cool stuff. Like there's more and more places. And then last shout out would be, so kind of far away to go if you had a reason to be that way. There's a place called Effy, EFFY, in Nottingham. And again, they're like tearing up the rule book of what people should do in coffee shops. And I'd probably say is up there in one of the most unusual coffee experiences that you can have in the UK, like tiny doses, brewing 2-minute espressos and kind of blowing people's minds.
Ollie, this has been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day. I really appreciate you, and hopefully we'll be speaking soon.
Yeah, Rad, thanks for having me. Cheers, Frankie.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to this episode of Beans and Breakdowns. I want to say a huge thanks to Ollie for hanging out on the podcast. Be sure to check out Born to Lose, the newest single from Lethal Minds, available out on all listening platforms. It's a really great track. The guest vocals from Jake also are insanely violent, so give that a listen. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. You can find out more information about the podcast by following us on Instagram at Beans and Breakdowns or on the web at beansandbreakdowns.com. Until next week, be sure to stay caffeinated and wake the fuck up!